Furious Driving, proud to be supported by Diamond Bright, protecting, cleaning and caring for the Furious fleet and for yours with 10% off using code FD10. Follow the links in the description below. Hello and welcome to Furious Driving. I'm out here in the driveway with Sleaze, the big old Rover P6 V8, which, well, it's sitting here languishing under the carport, covered in dust. And there's two things that are amazing. Well, one thing's amazing me, one thing really isn't. First thing that's amazing me is how dusty these cars get here under the carport, considering they're out of the elements, but dust still just blows in and sits on them, so it looks like it's a barn find, even though it's only been sat here for about a week and a half. And yeah, the problem is because the rain isn't getting on it, the rain isn't washing the dirt off, so it just sits on it. Even birds have flown under and pooped on it, which isn't ideal. However, what isn't amazing is the fact that the alternator, my little kind of quick take it apart, clean things up repair, didn't fix it. So today I am going to be popping this thing off. Now you'll notice there's only two wires and a bit of tape on this thing, and the reason being this has had a upgrade to the circuitry many years ago, so long ago I barely even remember what I did to it. So this needs either throwing away or overhauling, and on the dashboard I have acquired these. Hopefully we can make this thing work. I thought there were some brushes in this set as well. Are there the brushes in there? This is the rectifier, this gubbins here, which is what you plug the wires onto, and this is the regulator, if you want to use the made up words, not like I'm doing. Now I know this is a certain amount of kerfuffleage and soldering and hassle, but combined these two cost about 20-25 quid, and the alternator costs a good £100 more than that, so it's worth a shot. So armed with no instructions and very little idea of what I'm doing, let's start taking this thing apart. And weirdly, these two little tiny bolts here appear to be either 5.5mm or 7/32 of an inch, which is a silly size. Okay, so these are the parts we've got to change. This looks fairly easy to change. It doesn't look like it's this thing though. There might be some soldering involved to get the brushes in place. This will sit, how will it sit? Like this apparently. That looks too big. As I say, every single time I ever do anything on this channel, all these tools, these rather lovely ratchet wrenches and all the sockets and everything, are all available from the Amazon affiliate store. Just clicking on that link, or even buying something totally different later on, does go to help the channel with a little bit of a kickback. Now, how does this all fit together? Now, this is actually the first time I've used this shelter to shelter from the sun rather than from the rain, and it's actually making working out quite pleasant. Pleasanter if I could find the right size socket every time. Why are there so many size sockets on this thing? Everything I touch in here is a different size to the last one. So random. Ooh, that's spring loaded, that's worth remembering. Okay, so that didn't explode, so that was good. It doesn't fit. Perfect. That's what I like to see. The wrong size parts that don't quite fit in there. Ideal. Now that is annoyingly different. That doesn't match up to there. The little catchy things to hold in place don't hold on there. So I'm guessing it's probably absolutely fine to use gaffer tape and cable ties to hold a part of an alternator in there. I don't see an issue with that. So the spring-loady thing is the back of the brush. How do you get the old one out? Oh, there you go, just pull it. Huh. Well, that was easy. Oh, they're totally the wrong blooming alternator brushes. Well, look at that, not even close to being close. This is vast compared with that one. And looking at this thing, this regulator, whatever it is, the Hujime flip, there's no way that's going to fit in there. So basically every single thing that's come from eBay in this particular set of stuff has been totally wrong. Well, it's a few days later, and well, thankfully eBay means that you can actually get refunds these days quite easily. So I sent the incorrect parts back, got my 20 odd pounds back, not a problem. I did then have a little bit of a scurry around on eBay and discovered you can get a new alternator for not that bad. There's some really good discounts on there for some reason. So I picked up a new alternator for just £55, which is absolutely fantastic, considering it was discounted from like 150. Who knows how they make any money on that? Turns out it's apparently by not shipping the right one, because it turned up, and as I'm sure you're aware, alternators have 3 mounting lugs quite normally, and the variance is that sometimes it's 2 lugs on the left, sometimes 2 lugs on the right. This, though, depending which way you're facing it, has got 2 lugs on my left, 1 on the right for mounting it correctly. The one that turned up has got 2 on the right, 1 on the left, which means it's not going to fit on this car, even though the plug was correct. Meanwhile, I had started making a second Rover P6 video because, as you know, I've got 2 of these things, and the 2000 has been languishing in the lockup round the corner for a little while. And as I'm now stuck without a video on this car, I'll show you what I started filming on that one. Driving, and I've come down to my little lockup away from home to go and visit my old friend, the Rover 2000. We've been giving the P6 V8 a bit of attention and love the last couple of weeks, but we're neglecting, sadly, what is probably the better car of the 2. This is my 1972 P6 2000, which I've owned since the early 90s. I've owned it since it was basically 20 years old, and the car is now over 50 years old, but it hasn't moved in a little while because I've been having some starting issues with it. So, since you've seen it last, or possibly when you saw it last, I can't remember actually, I've replaced the earth cables to the battery in the boot. It's on a fairly recent battery as well. It's a nice UASA one. I've been tinkering around, and a thing that occurred to me is that because I have replaced the proper engine mounts because they'd collapsed with the hockey pucks a little while ago, they're made of rubber. They've not got the metal inserts, so there's probably no earth going through, and the earth tends to run through, or used to run through, the engine mounts on one side. So what I've done is I've added an extra earth strap to the engine base side of the engine mount, and I've then hooked that up down here to the exhaust, because that is going straight into the manifold, straight into the block. So we've got ourselves a nice good earth going on just there. Incidentally, it is very dark in here, so I'm using my nice Draper under bonnet lamp, and also from Junk in the Trunk some time ago, a viewer very kindly sent in these wearable light strips, which have been really handy for doing this. Additional problems, which I do need to go and look at while I'm under here, is, let's get actually the torch now, the starter motor wires were getting very hot. I took them apart and found that a number of them were held together with chock blocks wrapped in insulation tape from many, many years ago. I don't remember doing that, so I don't know when that happened. Also, I found a couple of broken wires, so I have followed suit and repaired them with chock blocks because, well, I'm not quite sure how else I'm going to fix those down there. I imagine there's some clever way of soldering or something. I will talk to an auto electrician when I've got the car out of the barn, but that will do for getting the car started. Additionally, this connector here is floating loose on what looks like a positive wire, and I don't know where that's meant to go to, and I'm a little concerned about it touching something. I don't recall where that went to previously. I wonder if that should go to the starter, or in fact, I don't know. The starter is the only thing it can reach from that position, in fact. Off camera, I have taken out this heat shield because that gave me access to literally nothing when that was there. And also, when I hooked up the battery, I did notice there's a bit of an unusual and not particularly pleasant smell from the alternator. So I've taken the alternator out and I will look at repairing or replacing that. It does seem to be a bit of an ongoing theme with me and P6s is that alternators are not my friend. So, yeah, don't know what would be the problem with that one. Anywho, right. I would be curious to now know if this thing will crank over and not get hot, because if there was an alternator issue, because the alternator's been on there a little while, if something has gone kaput and it was shorting inside the alternator and that was causing other issues, as well as the lack of earth, then that could be an issue. Let's give this a crank and see what happens. I didn't check the oil. I don't know if it's because it's got oil in it. I've got a feeling this dipstick is actually too short. It's showing 0 oil. Okay, let's pop some extra oil in. If that is too short of a dipstick, then that's not really a problem. If there is no oil in it, we don't want to do that. That would be a bad thing. Well, I've put a Dregor 3 in there. That's not rapid. Let's go and check those wires on the starter, make sure they're not getting hot, because that would be a bad thing. No. Seems to be okay. I think I was probably right, it was an earth issue previously, but I'm going to need maybe a jump pack maybe. Incidentally, if I do get this car to start, and I don't see why I shouldn't, because, you know, it's just probably some minor electrical issue, I do have a little bit of bodywork to be doing to this car, which is fortunately very easy because P6s are just bolt together toys. First of all, I've got a new wing on the wall to replace this wing just here, which has got a bit of a crust issue down the bottom. That's actually gaffer tape that's been painted white. Unfortunately, the paint shop that did it for me did it in the wrong shade of white, and I popped it on and it looked dreadful, so I took it off and used the rusty wing instead. Also, in this box just here, I have got a new old stock door shell
to go onto the passenger rear door, because that has got a bit of rust in the bottom which you can't really see unless you look closely, but the rest of the car has got green tinted sun-dim glass in it, apart from that door where that glass is in the garage, because I never got around to changing that because the door needed to be painted. So I've got a rattle can which is mixed up to the correct colour by, where is it, by Kent Paints, the same people who did the Aspen green for the Crown Victoria, waiting to go, so I can paint that door in Davos white, which is the colour of this car. I must take this car to Davos one day, that'd be fun to do. Well, it's a couple of days later, and well, as I just explained over in the other garage, well, I've made a bit of a boo-boo doing some eBay ordering, and I've just ordered, by complete coincidence, the correct alternator for this car instead of the other cars. So, making life easier on myself, rather than send it back and get a refund, I'll just switch this alternator into the engine bay. I'm going to put a jump pack on it and see if I can make the car start. It's a mechanical fuel pump, so it's going to take a minute to draw fuel through. Just making sure there's no wisps of smoke or smells of smoke, because I was getting a tiny bit of that before, but I think it was actually the alternator. I thought it did just occur. It doesn't really matter how good the battery and the fuel pump is if there's no actual fuel in the car. That's registering pretty much nothing. And the old mechanical fuel pump, this glass thing down here, yep, it's doing nout. It's shiny and pretty, but it's got no petrol in it whatsoever, so the car's never going to fire. Oh well, nice idea where it lasted. Now the reason I wanted to start it and move it is because its brakes are kind of seized on where it's been sat for a while. I dropped the black plastic cap that goes on the back of the connector for the alternator under the car somewhere. I wanted to move the car backwards. Oh well, I'll fit the alternator without it. Oh well. Okay, so the only difficult bit here, in fact, even that's not that difficult, is we'll switch this longer pulley out from this old alternator to the shiny new one. So, old method, stick a big screwdriver through the fan blade, get your impact and a 22mm, and off it pops. So easy. I mean, try and do that with a regular spanner can be a bit of a pain, but surprisingly not too hard with an impact. Difficult bit is now actually separating the pulley. Crikey, that was harder work than I thought it needed to be. Interestingly, there is no rebate on these things anymore. You just chuck them away, so I'm going to weigh these things in. Well, the old one, anyway. Not going to weigh the new one in, that would be silly. This is being precisely torqued up to exactly 7 ugga-duggers. I have had a pulley come off an alternator in the past. Trust me, it's not fun. Did find all the parts, but yeah, did make the onward journey tricky. Right, this isn't too hard to do. It's not a brain surgery exactly, or rocket science, or indeed rocket surgery or brain science. Just a matter of repositioning all these little nuts and bolts and the brackety things and getting the fan belt back in the right place, which hopefully won't take too long. I did have a oh yeah kind of a moment, because this fuel pump, which I mentioned earlier, was doing nothing to draw petrol, and you can hear the little hissy noise of air as it goes through. Oh, it's doing it. Oh. Previously, when the fuel tank has run dry, well, it doesn't look like a good colour, does it? When the fuel tanks run really dry, I've had to go and actually physically get a pump and suck the fuel through from the tank. But it hasn't done it this time. I'm going to try and start this thing again. Ooh, that's an unexpected bonus. I forgot the jump packs. This might be too low a battery to... Prophetic words just there. That is definitely too low. I'm going to call that mission accomplished, the fact we've got actual fuel. Oh, you can hear it hissing over into the carb. Oh, magic. Next video on this car, we'll see this thing running again. But not today, because I'm not going back and forth to go and get a jump pack now. I have my limits. Right, so alternator will be finding its way into the engine bay in the next couple of minutes. That'll be ready to go, bada bing. Then we can start this car up again and maybe take it out for a little drive and then work out where to go next. So I'm going to call this P6 finished, which is possibly an overstatement. But it is at least very, very well, it's just a niggly bit of wiring down there. So we've got earth, fuel, incredibly. I thought I was going to have to go and dump several gallons of V-power in there, but no, just the alternator to go back in, and I think hopefully we're actually good to go with this thing. So that's all good. Right, give me 10 minutes. We've now got 1.5 functioning P6s, which is 1.5 more than I had this morning. Right, let's go back to the driveway and the other one. Okay, so bouncing between cars, and we're back with the V8 again because a parcel has arrived. Another alternator, a little bit more expensive this time. I think this one was actually about £70. Haven't opened the box yet. Everything matched up as described as for this car. The photos matched the layout of the mounts. Let's have a look and see. I am so nervous. Oh, the trepidation. Will it, won't it be? Yes, it is correct. This little cable tie was actually in the photos to kind of delineate which corner you were looking at in all the photos, which is really handy. What was the seller called? Is this on the information here? Alternators and Starter Motors UK. So check those guys out because apparently they sell stuff that actually fits, which is a bonus. Right, let's get this thing mounted up and see if we've now got 14 volts when the car's running and we've got a car we can drive again, which would be nice. Now the only advantage to changing multiple alternators and this kind of thing is that when I do my next scrap run I will have loads of extra stuff to weigh in because, you know, motors are quite valuable. I've also got the old lawnmower engine as well, or motor, when I got a new lawnmower the other day, so that's a bonus, I guess you're going to call that. You know, M&S are doing really nice ground coffee at the moment. They're ground Colombian coffee, really nice. Really quite good value as well compared to sort of the big name brand. Amazing, M&S, can't go wrong. Oh, come on! The hole on the rearmost mount is narrower than the bolt I've been using, which is an issue because that needs to go into the hole. Always something, always something. So the little, what am I going to call it, the adapter thing that allows this thing to stand off from the back is narrower than the bolt that needs to go through it. But I need that full-size bolt because otherwise it's not going to do up. It's installed, 3 bolts, but a wrenchy thing with a crowbar to tighten it all up and tension it. One little fly in the ointment. Whoops, I've kicked over my coffee. 2 little flies in the ointment. This one had a little box screwed to the back of it, which doesn't quite clear the front of the engine. So I'm going to have to relocate that somewhere else before I take the car for a drive anywhere. But first of all, let's go find out if this is producing enough voltage. Fingers crossed. Oh, still not getting the ignition light on, that's curious. That's interesting, the alternator makes a discernible sound this time, it didn't do that before. But we are getting 14 volts in the back though, so we'll call that a win of sorts. I will just quickly mention though, in case you're wondering, I have previously tried flipping the bulbs between the oil and the ignition lights over, so I do know there is a working bulb in there. It just doesn't seem to be flashing up the ignition light. But we're now getting 14 volts, so 14 volts means the car will run. Let's take this on a quick test drive and then fingers crossed we've got a fixed car. We can carry on moving on to the next things with this never-ending project that hates me. Okie dokie. Let's give us a short drive and see if the battery survives. Nearly. Yeah, it's interesting I can actually hear the alternator now, which I couldn't hear before. Set the engine warm up a little bit. That bird poo is beyond the limit of windscreen wipers. Mere wipers will do nothing with that. I'm two-pedalling out the driveway so that we've got my foot on the accelerator and the brake to get the revs up. Just going to double check the power output on the battery. It's showing 14 volts or 14.5 volts at idle, so much better than before. Well, it seems to be going quite well. I'll pull over in a second and just double check. The oil pressure is off the chart. I'll pull over in a second and just double check we've still got voltage in the back, because that was the only thing that was really holding the thing up, because it would run really well and then it would just kind of conk when it ran out of battery power, because it's just running off the battery itself, not from any juice from the alternator. It does now look like we are running off the alternator as well, hopefully. I can't believe it's really over 60 psi. If it is, the engine's going to come through the side of the car in a moment. I'm sure I've told this story previously. That's not a great place to overtake. I may have told the story before. Years ago, when I had this car in its blue paint format, I drove it as far as Cambridge on the battery without the alternator connected, it turned out, because the fan belt had come off on the bottom pulley. And that's how far you can drive a V8 on purely battery power alone. And that was with headlights and heaters as well. Shows how little power old cars actually use. Oh, no side mirrors. I keep forgetting no side mirrors. Let's just double check we are still getting voltage. That's a big 10.4. Still over 14 volts at the battery. I'm going to stick some petrol in this thing now, because I'm not sure much fuel's in it, because the gauge isn't really working. Wow, so this is great. The Rover is now back on the road to being on the road again after yet another full start, 2-step forward, 1-step back scenario. We're back on the road again. Fantastic. I can get back to that long list of snags. And of course, hopefully, the 2000's a little bit closer to running as well. And the problem with that 2000 is that fuel pump, being mechanical and ancient, is a bit tricksy. And yeah, unless you fancy a mouthful of petrol, it's really hard to reprime. But, you know, we're getting there. It's all progress. In yet another video where the parts spend on making the video is slightly higher than the actual ad revenue from the video. But hey, that's old cars for you. We love them, don't we? Anywho, right. Thank you for watching. Like and definitely subscribe. And if you like cameras and stuff, head over to my clickbait channel, linked in the description below. I'm trying to get it monetized, so please just watch a video and let it run for a few minutes. It all helps. Thanks for watching and goodbye.